Hi, I'm Nikki owner of Diva Diva Company, the beauty, health, and wellness company. And our tagline is beauty beyond what you see. So today, it is October 2019, and I decided I was going to start a YouTube channel, and I decided that I wanted to share some of my October highlights and lows. So, one of the lows for me for the month of October, ironically, and it's Domestic Violence Month, Awareness Month. My marriage came to an end in October of 2014. And pretty much what happened was my husband came home one day from church and physically attacked me in front of our four children. And it really didn't warrant that. It wasn't like we were having a heated argument or anything like that. I was trying to leave to take my children to an activity, and he didn't want me to drive the vehicle that I was driving, and he physically attacked me. And I was in shock. I was in shock. It was the first time that he had ever put his hands on me, and I literally wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for my two oldest daughters, who at the time were 10 years old and 7. My 10-year-old, I remember her physically wedging herself in between both of us as he slammed my head on the floor. And so when I was able to compose myself from that situation, he went into damage control. I'm standing there in shock. He took the kids, he took the car, and he fled. And all I can say is, what the F just happened? I knew that we did not have a good marriage. Like, I knew that. It was everyone else who thought that we had problems that we could work through. I was crystal clear that this man did not love me the way that I needed to be loved. But I did not have a support system in supporting me to walk away. So the day that he put his hands on me, I knew that the marriage was over, and I knew that I had to leave, or he had to leave. But I didn't realize it would be as hard as it would be to leave. So it baffles me when I talk to people that don't know anything about domestic abuse and domestic violence, because they're two different things. Domestic abuse is the verbal, it's the emotional, it's the spiritual, it's the financial, it's the sexual, it is the mental. It is everything that comes before the hit comes, and it's everything that comes after the hit comes. Abuse is the hitting. It's the hitting. I like to refer to it as the killings that you see and then the poisoning that you don't see. Domestic violence is the black eyes, it's the bruises, it's the punches, it's the hits. That's what domestic violence is. You see that, you know that it exists, you know that something happened, you know that something's wrong. Domestic abuse, it's like poison. It's like somebody poisoning you. You know that something's wrong, but you can't figure out what's making you sick. People see that you're sick, but doctors can't even identify what's wrong. So I knew that before he hit me that there was something really, really wrong with our marriage. And I went to church faithfully. I was a faithful family member. And when I say that, I was the family member that if there was an event, I was the family member that was there cooking and planning and hostessing and catering to my family members. But when it came down to my situation and I tried to talk to church members, or I tried to talk to pastors, or I tried to talk to family members, I didn't have a voice. So when I made the decision to leave, a lot of people tried to convince me to stay. Even one of the domestic violence counselors that I went to said, well, maybe it's because he's having a hard time getting a job. This is why this happened. But I knew in my heart that he was exactly who he was, and he had just revealed himself officially. Like, he had been doing it, but he revealed himself officially. And what made me have the strength to say, no, I'm not going to stay, is A, it happened in front of my children. How was I going to ever explain to my 3 daughters and my son that this is what your father did? And you should never be in a relationship with somebody that's going to do that to you. Or tell my son not to hit women. How could I do that as a mother? The second thing was my son, who at the time was only like 2 years old. He remembered. The very next day he came in my room. I was balled up in a fetal position, still trying to figure out what just happened. Because it wasn't like a slap or a push or a kick. Not to say that that makes it any better. But like, he physically attacked me in our home in front of our 4 children. And my 2-year-old son came in the room and he said, Daddy hit you. And so at that moment, I got up. I got online and I started Googling domestic violence. And all of these things that was not the hitting, that was not the slapping, that was not the punching, came up. Stuff about sexual abuse, stuff about spiritual abuse, stuff about mental, emotional, financial abuse. All of these other things came up and they all applied to me. So I called the 1-800 number for domestic violence and I talked to a counselor. And she informed me, she said, baby, he might have just hit you for the first time, but you've been in a domestic violence situation probably your whole marriage, which at the time had been 10 years. We had just made 10 years. And I had to swallow that pill. She said, we're going to get you some counseling. And I immediately went and started getting counseling. And it was every Thursday. And I just remember how hard those Thursdays were because she walked me back through my childhood and my parents. And I had to look at my family. Like, how did I not recognize that this was not right? Because it was in my home. I had to look at the people that I was associated with and how they handled relationships. I had to look at myself and where I was at in my life when I met him and what things I had allowed him to do in my life that had changed the person of that who I was to accommodate who I thought he needed me to be as a wife. And those Thursdays were so hard because I wanted him out of the house. And he had really became who he was. He began to intimidate more. He had started stalking me, I guess, because he was concerned that I was going to leave. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And so it came to a head one day, one Sunday. We had came from church. We were still going to church. I had tried to tell some church members. They told me they didn't want to hear it. I had told a couple of friends they didn't want to hear it. The few family members that I had told said, oh, he said you guys had a lover's quarrel. Like, I had no voice. I had no money. I was a stay-at-home mom. I homeschooled my kids. He didn't put me on the bank account until after he put his hands on me. And even then, he kept very limited funds in there. You know, that was like an olive branch. Like, you know, I didn't mean to do this. Let me put you on a bank account, but I'm going to only keep $25 in there. And he was a truck driver, so he was gone quite frequently. It was just me and the children at home. And I had learned how to live on less, take care of the kids on less. But we were lacking. We didn't have basic necessities that we should have had. And I knew something was wrong with that. And whenever I would talk to anybody about it, they would make it seem like, well, he's a hardworking man. He's trying to take care of his family. Don't be too hard on him. But I was just like, no, this doesn't make sense. When we have money, he's not doing what he needs to do with it. This is beyond me being a submissive wife. You know, listening to him, letting him be the head of the household, like all of those scriptural things that people teach you to do. Because this man went to church. He served at church. He was my pastor's armor bearer. He traveled with my pastor. But it came to a head one day we came home from church, and I had got to the point where, like, if he was in the home with me, I would just lay and look at the wall. I could not interact with him. And we had a 3-story house, and I was on the top floor, he was on the middle floor, and the children were playing in the basement. And all of a sudden, I can hear through the vents that he was yelling at my oldest daughter. I mean, screaming at her in a way that I had never heard him yell at her before. So I quickly got up. That's a mother's instinct. And they had taught me in domestic violence counseling, you know, you don't want to put yourself in certain positions. And by the time I got to the 2nd floor, he had her held up by her collar. She was 10. She was a little tiny thing. And, you know, I intervened and he let her go. But before she got to the top of the step, he said, if I can't beat my children, I'm leaving. And there was a red table by my front door. And I said, you know, you can put your keys on that table on your way out. So my kids gathered in my bedroom, and I started helping him to pack his things. And the thing about it was, he realized that this was it. He knew it was it. And he dragged this thing out all night long. The kids fell asleep. I fell asleep, just trying to get him out of the house. And, you know, he became very angry, and he was yelling and he was screaming at me. And 2 of the kids were still in the bed with me, and my oldest daughter had taken my son, and they were in her bedroom. But I remember that night because I didn't know what he was going to do. Got him out the house, and he never returned and crossed back across my home threshold again. Not while I was there, only to come back, I think, with maybe my mother or somebody to try and see if he could get any more of his belongings. But I had pretty much packed all of his things up. So this leads up to why I share my story at this point. My husband physically attacked me one time. And in that one time, I decided that I'm not going to stay in the marriage. There were so many other things that he had done before then that were abusive, that people ignored because it wasn't a punch, it wasn't a hit, it wasn't any of those things. So now he's hit. And I'm thinking, this is easy. I can just get out of this marriage. This is easy. I'm going to take care of my kids. I got 3 degrees. The house is really mine. My parents had got me the house. The house was mine. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm strong. I can rebuild. But what I wasn't prepared for was the courts. Abusers have rights. And don't you ever forget it. They have legal rights to see their children. They have legal rights to have access to homes that they've lived in. And if you were in a situation like me, I had negative $13.50 in that banking account. And 4 kids. No job. The cars were in his name. He came and took the cars. I had nothing but children. and to go to court and be told that you have to pay for an attorney, and to have judges that are not required by federal laws to have training in domestic violence demean you in court, until you have walked a mile in a woman's shoes that has tried to get out of DV. You can't ask, why did she not leave? Why did she stay? You pick the poison that you know. It's both gonna kill you and affect you. I remember sitting in places that the judges told me, but this is where you need to go to get help, and watching the workers treat the women like trash. And I remember saying, why are you talking to them like this? And they say, because they go back 7 times, at least statistics show that they go back 7 times. And when I looked at the reasons why a woman would go back 7 times, I'm not going back 7 times because I feel like I'm safer or because he loves me. I'm going back 7 times because I know if I go back, at least I'll have a place to stay. At least I'll have food. At least my children will have a roof over their head. I found out very quickly because my ex began to, once I got him out the house, he began to come back and stalk. And so the organization that I had been getting counseling from, they had told me from the beginning, you have to leave. But in my mind, I was like, well, why do I have to leave? This is my house. Why do I have to leave? He should leave. But legally, he had the right where he didn't have to leave, honestly. So I had to get a protection order. That made things worse for me. I didn't realize that you had to have things in the protection order that said like a certain amount of feet back. So like he would show up at activities with the kids and I would come out the bathroom. He would be standing this close in front of me. And there was nothing that I could do about it because legally he didn't touch me or he didn't say anything to me. And that's what my protection order covered. But I didn't know that. Financially, he dragged me through court. He fought the divorce. He fought custody. He fought everything. I went through 3 attorneys. As soon as I went to work, all of my money was going into paying legal fees. In my state, they said if you were divorced for a whole year, separated, and then I also found out he was cheating. His sister-in-law, my sister-in-law, told me that he was also cheating with one of the ushers at the church. So I'm thinking this is gonna be a cakewalk to get this divorce. When I tell you I had to fight, it took me almost 3 years to get a divorce. By that time, just trying to keep my kids in activities so that they would have some sense of normalcy. We ended up staying in a safe house. I mean, when I tell you the rug was snatched from under our whole entire family. And I had to consistently figure it out. I didn't want child support. I didn't want anything to do with him. I just wanted to be free. The courts force you to get child support. And then they gave him access to my bank account. Like he could put the money directly into my bank account, which went against the grain of the fact that this was a domestic violence case. Your cell phones, you have to be careful. People can put tracking devices and stuff in your cell phone. I had no idea. It was hard. So I took the first job that was offered to me and they paid me a very low salary and required that I do a lot of traveling and stuff. At the time, my kids were still homeschooled. I was relying on some family members to somewhat help me. They felt like, oh, you had a choice. You could have stayed. You don't have to be going through this. He just hit you one time. He just cheated on you once. And I think that's what hurt the most. The way that my church responded to me that I was attending at the time. Because the pastor just went silent. When I say domestic violence, he went cold turkey. He need to give me and these kids as much as I can good. And when I tell you, I served at that church. So it bothers me when people say, when you're looking for a good man, he has to be saved and this, and this. Abuse happens in churches. Those men are serving in churches every day. They are public citizens serving in the United States. And I know that it's men and women, because one of the reasons why legally I think that some things are so difficult, because there are some women that abuse the judicial system, and it makes it difficult for women that are really going through the issues that they're going through. So I had to stay faithful. I had to stay really, really, really faithful. It was hard when he had weekend visitations with the kids and he was saying things to turn them against me. It was hard when I would run into people that we knew and he was telling people things like I was on drugs and I cheated on him. I mean, this stuff was devastating to a person like me that really put a high emphasis on being a good wife and a good mother. So now, how do you rebuild from this? So for me, I use physical fitness to strengthen my muscle. Every time I had to go to court, I ran. Every time I had to shell out money that I didn't have, I lifted weights. And I decided that going into my 40s, I was going to be strong mentally, spiritually, financially. I made decisions coming through this that the average person would never understand or would never make. When he fell in arrears $20,000 with the child support, social services said, you have to get welfare because it's a DV case. So we don't want him trying to kill you because he don't want to pay this. That was degrading to somebody like me that had 3 degrees, but was just trying to get back out there and get work. I hadn't worked in 10 years. But I stood on faith and fitness. I knew what God had for me was greater than what I could ever imagine for myself. And he showed me that every step of the way. The money that he owed me in arrears, because one year he even like did something funny. Like we were separated and divorced. I had been working. I needed my tax refund so bad because I was just like so behind in bills. He did something where he intercepted that. I didn't even get a tax refund that year. But God. When God intercepted his tax refund because he hadn't paid child support, I opened up a hair salon. I decided to become a personal trainer. God pruned me. He removed people that really didn't support the fact that I made the decision to leave an abusive marriage so that I could have happiness and joy and peace in my life, and so that my kids can have a role model and example that didn't show abuse. He pruned people. He plucked them. It didn't matter if they were family members. It didn't matter if they were friends that I thought were going to be my friends to the end. He plucked them, pruned them, removed them. And it hurt. And I cried and I shared big tears. He took me to my new church home because for a long time I was not stepping foot into a church. I was like, man, forget these church people. But the church home that I was in, it was a teaching church. It allowed for me to get in the Word of God, for God to reveal to me who I was. It did not mean that the enemy did not consistently try to attack me every single step of the way. My ex-husband had pressed charges on me for stuff that I didn't even know a husband could press charges against a wife on, but that stuff was like on my record. I had to get that stuff expunged. His whole thing was, if you want this to end, you need to stay with me. That was his whole thing. And my whole thing was, you can do what you want to do, but I'll never be with you. And so Diva Diva Company was something that I wanted to do when I first got out of college. And along the way of being married to him, every chance or every time I tried to implement something, it failed. I wrote books. I never had my book signing. I had products. They never got off the ground because I literally was sleeping with the enemy. So yes, ladies, you have to be very careful as to who you get into relationship with, who you have children with, who you partner with. But I thought that this was a good person. He had a very evil soul. So me and my children, we still struggle. I had to make hard decisions. I gave up our car. Eventually, I gave up our house. We went through a time and a period where we were separated. Now we're back together. We're still struggling, still with some housing things. I walked. I prayed. I talked to God. But I did what I needed to do for me to be healed and for me to be whole so I could be the best mother to my children that I could be. And I knew I couldn't be the best mother if I stayed in a relationship with him. And so I'm extremely selective about who I date and who I engage with now. I do not bring men around my children. I really don't even date. I don't. Because I feel like God won't do that to me twice unless I do something that I'm not supposed to do. So I'm very prayerful and waiting that God will send the person that's supposed to be in my life and is supposed to be a good father figure for my children, because my ex still has issues. Still has issues. And unfortunately, abusers can't get any better until there are laws in place that require for them to take counseling. And I'm not talking about co-parenting counseling. We had to go to co-parenting classes through the divorce, and this man never wanted to co-parent with me. He would tell my kids in a minute, no. He could be holding a bag of rice and know that they hungry, and he would tell them no. And that's their father. But that's what abusers do. It is about control. So, this is it. This is my story. The struggle is real. If you get any takeaway from what I just said, abuse can happen to anybody that's willing to open up their heart and fall in love with the wrong person. It's beyond the hits, the punches, the slaps, the bruises, the black eyes. It's beyond all of that you can see. It's all that other stuff. If you're going to leave, be prepared to fight to leave. Your abuser is not just going to let you leave. You got to be prepared to fight. And whatever his main tactic is, whether it's violence, whether or not it's financial, whether or not it's trying to destroy your reputation, you got to be prepared for all of that. And the only way to be prepared for it is to stay prayerful and to stay in the Word of God and to seek Him. Because at the end of the day, it might not be nobody but you and God getting through it. It's still days and times that I look up and I'm like, okay, God, it's me and you against the world today. Let's go do this. And also to know that if somebody's coming to you and they're trying to tell you, look, this is a situation. You know, if you don't have the information, that's fine. But still take the time to listen to that person, because it could be something deeper than what you just think is on the surface. Because people are crazy. People are crazy. And my ex-husband was trying to kill me in a different kind of way. He was trying to kill me through stress. The stress was killing me of being married to him. I was overweight. I was overworked. I was unhealthy. And he knew it and he didn't care. And anything that he could put more on me to break me, he did. So that's my domestic violence story. And I don't like the term survivor, because I feel like I thrived through this. I refused to let this situation define who I was, because I knew deep down inside I was a beautiful woman. I had to peel that weight off and find her. I knew that I was an entrepreneur, and I'm still an entrepreneur. Win or lose, I'm an entrepreneur. And, you know, I know that I'm here to help people. And I'm here to help people to get through this. So I hope this video helps. I hope you subscribe and like my channel. Check out A Diva's Guide for Beauty, Health, and Wellness. And, you know, also just check out some of the other stuff that I have. But I want you to know that you're not alone. You don't have to be in silence with it. God wants you to heal through helping people. God wants you to heal through helping others. And so God is your help and your source. So you're supposed to be somebody else's help and source. So I hope that this helps someone to understand a little bit more about DV. And that you can be strong and you can come through it on the other side. All right? Be blessed.